Welcome to the Probate Nation. I am Richard Ruddy. Our show this evening is the final one of a two-part series on selling real estate held in a Virginia estate or conservatorship. Tonight the show will cover the following topics: the value of staging a property, where and how to list a property for sale, marketing strategies, the sales contract, and of course, closing the sale. We are pleased to have two experienced realtors to cover these topics and more so you, the executor and conservator, can position the property to sell it quickly and for the best price. Let me tell you a little bit about these real estate professionals. Our first guest has been a licensed realtor in Virginia since 2004, and in each year thereafter she has earned many awards in recognition of her work as a realtor, including Northern Virginia Award-winning Realtor for Sales and Quality, and Washingtonian Magazine's Best Realtor. She's been married to her husband Eric for 32 years. Together they have raised two wonderful children in McLean and are blessed with two grandchildren. Our second guest is a Washingtonian by birth, a lawyer by training at the George Mason University School of Law, and a realtor by choice for over 40 years. He's a real estate agent with Long & Foster and Forbes Global Properties. He's licensed in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. And he's married to his wife, Maureen, and they have four miraculous children and two delightful grandchildren. Please welcome realtors Kelly Olafson and Hill Slowinski. So Kelly, thank you, and Hill, thank you both for coming back to help us finish this topic. Kelly, what does staging the property mean?
The importance of staging, in my opinion, is very, very big. It's the first impression. As I've mentioned before, you really have to be show ready, magazine beautiful, pictures need to be awesome. You don't walk down the aisle in jeans and a t-shirt. You never sell your house. Oftentimes in this area, it's $800,000, $1 million property. You don't walk down the aisle in jeans and a t-shirt when you do that. When you sell your property, you got to make it perfect, like you're selling or planning a wedding. First impressions, everything. Buyers really have very little vision. They want it move-in ready. They don't have time. It's a busy world. They want instant move-in perfect. So they will not feel comfortable looking at your house if you have bathrooms that are a mess or you have clutter everywhere and you haven't, neutralized the house to make it look like a possible property they could envision their family in. So staging is key, in my opinion.
So I think that goes hand in hand with our topic, our conversation earlier about the importance of, in many cases, emptying the house out so it's clean. And at that point then, as you say, you want to give the prospective buyers the vision about what the house could be like. And so then you try to stage it. Now, staging has a lot of different meanings. So does staging can mean we rearrange their furniture, or do we bring in new furniture, or what do we do?
Good question. Staging is definitely all over the board and how much you do. I really believe if you spend a little bit of money on staging, it's definitely worth it. If the client does have furniture there that's beautiful, oftentimes the staging consultant will come in with me and we will tag certain pieces that are absolutely awesome when it comes to making the home look beautiful. So we'll keep whatever we can to save money when it comes to the cost of staging. But staging, usually ahead of even the stager, it means freshly painted, beautiful sparkling floors, a cleaning person coming in to clean from top to bottom of the house so it's beautiful and clean looking. Windows washed ahead of market, landscapers out front, and I have contractors for each and every one of those things, and usually it's me who's planning those things, and I know Hill does the same thing when he's preparing a property for sale. So staging can be all over the board depending on what the client needs, but oftentimes when it's recommended by a attorney like yourself, they need a lot of help, and sometimes the sellers aren't even local, so we will do all that work for the client. And if they have some furniture, great. But if they don't, we bring in furniture that we rented from a rental company that the stager and I work with.
So generally, though, the realtor is kind of the quarterback as far as that whole staging process. Now, is there a cost to stage a property? I mean, I assume in the case of the realtor, that's not the cost, but is there a cost to hire someone to help stage the property, provide that extra furniture and all that?
Yes, and it's not that expensive to stage a property. If you think about, let's just say, for example, sake in this area, $1 million property, it's less than 1% to stage that property. So it's extreme. Actually, it's very less than half of 1%. 3,000 is about the typical price to stage a property, and that's including bringing furniture to get the property ready, and it will look beautiful. Oftentimes, I've even had people come in and after looking at pictures online and say, "This house is so beautiful. I just wanted to see it in person to see if it was reality." And it needs to be move-in ready, move-in beautiful, and those pictures are their first introduction to the house, so they need to be gorgeous as well. And the staging is what provides that.
Now, and you don't necessarily have to stage every room. Some rooms can be empty, okay? But you want the key rooms that otherwise people would live in. Kil, what's your experience with staging, and what would you like to add to that discussion?
If the home is vacant, staging can make a huge difference. We did a test between two properties that were identical in their format and size, and one was not staged and the other was staged. And the one that was staged not only sold quicker, but it sold for about $35,000 more than the one that wasn't, and it only cost like $5,000 to stage it. If it's a larger home that has open spaces, it helps a buyer visualize exactly how it can be used. If you have a large basement, you can separate into a game room or a home theater or a bar area. For the larger properties that we have, it usually takes a little longer to sell, and most people are doing their research on the internet. The first thing they see is the pictures of the listing. And so it's critical to have 40, 50, 60, 70 pictures on a listing before they come to the property to get them to see it. So the staging is what really carries the day on that.
Okay. Here, let's continue on. We're getting ready to present the property now, and let's talk a little bit about how is the listing price established?
There are several tools that we use. One is the competitive market analysis, which we discussed earlier, which we as agents can perform for the sellers. If it's an estate that does have an appraisal, or even an individual who wants to get an appraisal on his own, they can use that too, because that's a much more detailed analysis. In both cases, you're dealing with properties that sold and actually went under contract at a much earlier date. So we have to find out, has the market changed, has the environment changed, has the buyer sentiment changed, and we have to take that into account. We also look at the seller's timetable. Are they expecting to be somewhere in 3 months, so we have to sell it quicker so they can get the cash for wherever they're moving? Or if they're not in a rush, what range in the price pyramid do we want to put it at? We also let them know that there's many more buyers at a lower price range than there are in the middle or a high price range. So we don't want to have it so high that it becomes stale. And we don't want to have to take it off the market and then reintroduce it 60 days later to set the clock on those.
Now, when is the for sale sign typically put in the front yard?
The sign can go in any of 3 times, usually in order. When the property is activated in MLS, you should have the sign up there by then. Before it actually goes active, while you're bringing in the furniture for staging or the seller is rearranging his furniture, you can put the sign up there but not say for sale yet. We can also do a coming soon status. Coming soon is a pre-market status. Lets other agents know that the house is coming on the market. They can inform their buyers, let's keep an eye on this. And that's a time period where either repairs are done or we're getting the staging set up or it's being painted. And that usually occurs no more than 21 days before it goes active on the market with the sign out front.
Okay, so are there pre-sale or private sale opportunities before the listing is made active?
There are 2 in particular. One is called private exclusives. That's where a seller may want to limit the exposure of the property for a variety of reasons. It can be for privacy or for security, and they may have an elderly relative who's living there and they don't want to disturb them that much, or they may be testing the market to see if that price looks attractive to buyers. The other one is called the coming soon status, as I mentioned earlier. Coming soon is in the preparation stage, and it also allows people to let's get the photographs up. In the private exclusive, we can only market within our own brokerage. So I couldn't have Kelly marketing it at her brokerage also. That's the nature of the private exclusive. It limits the exposure to a smaller number of buyers. That's a plus or a minus in the eyes of the seller, depending on what they want to do. For the coming soon status, as I said, it's a pre-market exercise to let them know it's coming on, but we don't allow access to the house during that coming soon status. Agents and buyers can only come in as when it's active on the market.
But during that coming soon, they can actually see the pictures?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Kelly, I wanted to ask you, you know, what are some of the lessons you've learned about the process to market a property, as Hill has discussed a little bit about some of these different stages here?
I agree with Hill. The coming soon is an excellent idea. It's our way as marketers and professionals to get the word out that that house, that awesome home, is about to go on the market. As Hill said, we can't let people in the property because there's, you know, definite fines for that, and so we have to wait until it's actually on the market, active and live within the multiple listings, so it's fair to every realtor. But prior to going on the market, getting a property ready for sale and having some nice pictures of the beautiful yard, or if you can get pictures of the property, you know, like the kitchen and the master bedroom, those are the main rooms that people care a lot about. That is great. But if you can't, at least to have some pictures online and have lots of conversations. So by the time the actual property goes on the market, we have a Rolodex of about 10 people, 10 plus people to be able to get in immediately. I put a house on the market last week and we had it in coming soon for 21 days. We had 100 people the first day on the market through that house, 100 people at the open house, and 16 realtors scheduling appointments with their buyers and getting them in the property the first day. And then by the second day, we had multiple contracts. That is because of the pre-marketing, and that is because of those photos like that we put online. So it works.
So what I take from, as we've had this discussion so far tonight, is that in coming soon, the photos are important, but the photos are only as important as what's in the house too. So the staging becomes even more important to make sure we present ourselves and look like the bride ready to get married, so that people want to marry us. Okay, so that's a very good analogy. So, well, Kelly, let's continue on with discussing about marketing the property. You know, social media is used so much these days for everything. I mean, I can't wait till my grandkids have their own cell phones. The next thing you know, we're going to see all kind of activity. But you know, the younger people use that to do everything. Tell me a little bit how you use social media to market a property.
Well, social media is important. I have to say it's not something of our generation that we were used to years ago, but now it's a very vital part of selling a house. So to have a home always with your realtor, be marketed, whether it be on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, you can buy advertising, all of that is super important, and making that exposure as much as possible is a must in today's world.
And so how do, you know, we've done all these steps to get the property, you know, listed for sale, coming soon, now it's active. How is the property shown to buyer prospects? Do they just come around and knock on the door and gawk in, or do they have, I mean, how does that work? How does that work?
There's definitely a lot of good security now for marketing homes, which I'm glad for. A buyer usually contacts the realtor, and then the realtor goes on the multiple listing in something called showing time, and they schedule an appointment to visit that house. I always like to have 2 hours notice for the property before people are allowed to go in. And usually it's like a half-hour time slot that people come in. And as I mentioned, like that house last week, we had 16 showings from realtors the first day on the market because of the coming soon and pre-marketing that got done.
Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about closing the property. So, you know, I mean, that's, before I go back to Hill, tell me about seller concessions. Is that something that's just what we have to live with nowadays, or how does that play out in the journey towards closing? Kelly?
As far as selling a home and seller concessions, that has kind of waffled a lot over the years, depending on the time of life. During the pandemic, I don't think any of us expected the market to be as hot as it really was. So seller concessions were next to none because there were so many buyers begging for that house. I think buyers were sitting at home going, I hate my house for this reason. I want to buy a new one and I want to buy one fast. And so sellers didn't have to do much to get ready and go on the market. And a lot of people were worried about, the health hazard of people traipsing through their house. So people were shockingly buying houses sight unseen or by Zoom. Those days, luckily, are over, and buyers are able to ask for some things, but they're still not able to ask for a lot in today's market. If it's working, most sellers will not fix it. And then back to people who are typically a client of yours, Richard, I always say, we as realtors, it's our job to protect the seller, and your executors of the estate, the heirs, they've never lived in that house oftentimes. And as a result of that, I say the property is pretty much sold as is. And therefore, buyers can't be too obnoxious in asking for the moon and the stars. If it's working, then they're getting the house that way. They're not allowed to ask for a new roof because it looks like it's at the end of the life of that roof. That's just unreasonable. It's not leaking, so we're not fixing it.
Phil, how about yourself? What's your experience now with seller concessions as part of that journey towards closing the property?
We aren't seeing them very often now either. We didn't during the COVID. In those cases, a lot of people did pre-inspections if they had enough time to do it before we had offers being submitted. But Kelly mentioned something about selling houses as is. Usually, if it must be sold as is, we counsel the seller on pricing it accordingly, knowing that certain repairs will have to be done and the seller doesn't have any funds to put into it. But at the same time, the concessions, we aren't seeing them occur as frequently as they did in the past.
Kelly, how do we handle the HVAC system and those types of things that people are always worried about breaking down the day after closing? How do we handle that again as our journey towards closing proceeds?
Great question. The HVAC system is probably the part of the house that a lot of people worry about the most. If it's working, a buyer really shouldn't be asking to have it replaced because it's working. Now, a lot of times home inspectors will alarm their buyer and make them think, oh, it's at the end of the life. Well, if that's the case, we oftentimes will provide a home warranty as a seller. They usually are the ones who pay for that home warranty, and it's about $600 a year, $600 to $700 a year. And that home warranty protects the HVAC system if it does die on that new buyer. So for the next year, they have a warranty in place to cover all the appliances in the HVAC system. It usually will not cover the roof. But the HVAC system, if it does die in the first year and they have a home warranty in place, the home warranty company replaces it. And I actually have owned 2 homes where I had a home warranty and the HVAC system was replaced by the home warranty company, far cheaper than the $5,000 or $6,000 new furnace.
That's great. Now, hey, Kelly, who actually picks the settlement? We've got a contract, we've written up concessions that are in the contract, so on and so forth. Now we're getting ready. We got a contract. We're going to go to closing. Someone has to settle that, actually do the settlement, and so who actually picks the settlement company to do the settlement?
In the contract, the buyer, when they submit a contract to the seller for ratification and hopefully to earn the opportunity to own that home, they specifically state who is the settlement company. So in Virginia specifically, they usually get to pick the title company, the closing company. The buyer does.
Hill, I want to ask you, do we need to go to court and get the contract approved before we go to closing?
If the will did not provide for the selling of the real estate and they got permission from the court to do so for those who are inheriting it, then they'd have to go to court, I believe, to get the contract approved. In the conservatorship, since that is by court order also, that would have to go to the court for approval too. The ratified contract would.
Yeah, generally, I think if we're serving any of those capacities, just because we like to protect ourselves, a lot of times we will go to court and get a court order. But a lot of times you'll have to check with the settlement company to see what they might require, because you don't want to find out as you get close to settlement, and next thing you know, the title company says we want this done or that done, and you need a little time to get that done. Now, Hill, Are closings still done in person?
Not as often as before. For the buyers who have financing, yes, they are done in person because the lenders will require wet signatures on that. Sellers can often sign all the documents digitally or ahead of time, and then they're prepared for settlement right away.
Now, Kelly, do buyers still do a walk through the property on the day of closing as we used to do years ago?
Yeah, actually they do, and it's a great idea to do a walkthrough because it protects everybody involved. I mean, I've had it where the day of closing, a tree fell just, in the yard. It didn't hit the house, but who takes that tree away? Is it the buyer who's about to buy today or the seller? So the seller had to do so. So yes, before closing, you definitely want to do a walkthrough either the day before or the day of. If there's storms that day, you want to do it the day of to make sure at the time of signing the contract or signing all the closing documents that the house is in excellent shape. So you test all the appliances and make sure the house is in good condition before going to closing. Yes. And everybody signs off on it. So later on, they can't complain that something happened and no one addressed it.
Okay. Now, Hill, wrapping up this particular discussion in this area. Tell me a little bit about some of the lessons you've learned over the years in connection with getting to closing.
Well, in DC and Maryland, they allow 5 days for walkthrough before closing. The benefit of that is it gives the seller an opportunity to remedy any situation that may be out of place. It's hard for title companies or for lenders to allow an escrow now, because if there is an escrow involved or a subsidy involved to repair something and it's done the day before closing, they usually have to delay the closing, and the request has to go back to the underwriters at the lender. But otherwise, the closings right now seem to be simpler than they had been, say, 15 years ago.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Kelly, let's go to you now and let's kind of pull together all the things we talked about. We have maybe a minute or two left in our show. Tell me some key things that lessons learned as a realtor that you'd like to pass on to prospective sellers of real estate.
As far as prospective sellers, I really think it's important as a realtor to really empathize with what they're going through. Oftentimes, the seller isn't even lived in that house. They're just a relative of somebody who used to live there. As a realtor, it's our job to make sure we hold their hand every step of the way, reassure them that we're going to be there to hold their hand to get that contractor in to paint or to fix that plumbing concern or to stage the property. All of those things are important, but it's overwhelming when you're thinking of selling your house, and you got to make sure you hire the realtor who knows the market well and that's going to take care of your hand holding every step of the way, all the way to closing, and to defend you and the price that you guys have come up with together, both what I recommend as a realtor on price and also what's the price that the open market's going to jump on, and the process is going to be pleasant and you're going to get top dollar because you priced reasonably at a fair price.
Hill, how about yourself? Some final lessons learned that you want to share with our viewers.
Real estate practice is very much like an iceberg. What our sellers see or buyers see is really the tip of the iceberg. There is a tremendous amount of work that goes on in the background that Kelly and I perform that sellers don't really know about or buyers don't know about. It's dealing with all the other partners that we have in pulling this whole project together. A simple example is pay attention to what we're saying about our recommendation in the price range, because if you price it too high, that will help the house down the street sell and not yours. You'll lose that buyer. Otherwise, your house will go stagnant on the market. We try to create a sense of urgency around the sales because we're doing that in our sellers' or our buyers' best interest, letting them know you better move quickly on this, or having the sellers be prepared for an onslaught of potential multiple offers, we hope. A lot of sellers think their home is going to sell easily. It sells easily because of the effort we make. It's not because it's just inherent with the sale of the house, even though it may hear it's a seller's market. So my role is really, I really don't sell real estate. I help my clients make good decisions with good information. And they lead themselves down to the decision. They make the decisions on pricing and scheduling, everything else. It's with the benefit of the knowledge and the experience that I have, and with the company I have behind me supporting them.
You know, Kelly and Hill, I want to thank you both for all this time you guys have spent educating our viewers about how to sell real estate, if they're handling it as a conservator for mom or dad, or if they're even using a power of attorney to take care of things for mom or dad, or if someone has passed away and they're handling real estate in an estate, you know, that for a relative or a loved one. Great information, good advice, a lot of great lessons learned and experience that's just been poured out here, of course, over the course of these two shows. So I want to thank you guys for this great public service. It's been a great help, and it's going to help a lot of people over the years ahead. So thank you guys both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, selling real estate presents a host of challenges if you want to maximize the sales price. Over the course of two shows, our guests, two experienced real estate professionals, shared their recommendations and experiences. You know, of course, you can certainly attempt to prepare and sell the property yourself in an effort to save the cost of the realtor commission, but I suggest you resist that temptation. Hire a real estate professional who works in the marketplace each day. Listen and follow their advice, and at the end of the day, you will have met your fiduciary duties as an executor or conservator and sold the property quickly and for a market price. This concludes our show this evening. We hope you found this two-part series informative. Remember that replays of this show can be viewed on the Probate Nation website and YouTube channel. On behalf of the Probate Nation, I want to thank you for visiting with us.